Hi friends, it's Amy. Welcome to my Bookish Life. Today I want to talk about the 14 books that I read in the month of February. So let's get to it. So of the 14 books that I read, 7 of them were for an adult audience, 2 were YA, and 5 were middle grade. 4 were in a physical format, 7 were a digital format, and 7 were an audiobook format. Obviously, some of the books I had in more than one format because that's how I roll sometimes. I read a total of 4,206 pages, which equals about 150 pages per day and 300 pages per book. I read 13 fiction and 1 nonfiction. 9 of them I owned from my own library, and 5 I borrowed from other sources, and 5 of them were ARCs. It was a great month. It was a little bit challenging choosing my favorite, but one definitely stood out. So without further ado, let's talk about them, shall we? The first book that I read, that I finished in February, was a carryover from January, and that was Boys on the Boat by Daniel James Brown. This book is about the 1936 rowing team from the United States at the Olympics. It talks about the passion that these athletes had, their drive, their teamwork, their effort, their persistence, and the unbelievable amount of pressure that they were under as they were competing under the watchful eyes of Adolf Hitler. It was fascinating. I loved it, and I bought a physical copy of it as soon as possible so I could put it in my classroom. I absolutely loved it. Trigger warning for the insanely evil stepmother. You will want to throw something at her. The next book that I finished was Rover by Christopher Krovatin. This book my students chose for me. I gave them 3 options and they got to choose which one I would read. And they chose the one that was going to scare me, and it was pretty creepy. I will give them that. I did enjoy it more than I thought I was going to. I will leave my vlog reading experience down below. It was interesting. I liked it. The next book that I finished was called Tidal Wave by Beth Prentice. This was a great palate cleanser after the creepiness of Rover. It's a cozy mystery, so it wasn't necessarily warm and fuzzy. However, it takes place in Hawaii. Who doesn't love taking vacations through their books when they're stuck at home? I know I do. So I really enjoyed this one. It's part of the Aloha Lagoon Cozy Mystery series. It's written by multiple authors. The series is written by multiple authors, focusing on different characters. This is the 4th book that focuses on Samantha, surf instructor at the Aloha Lagoon, and her mysteries are really great. She's a great character. I really enjoy when her books are in the series. I like the whole series. I've enjoyed every book that I've read from the series, so recommend. The next book that I read was Girl Waits with Gun by Amy Stewart. This is historical fiction based on the true story of Constance Kopp, who was the very first female undersheriff in the United States. And this whole set of events that brought her to be the undersheriff is one fateful day when she and her sisters were driving their wagon through town, and they were hit by an automobile of an insanely evil man. And because they called him out on the fact that he had done wrong, he made their lives chaos for years. And it's just a really, really engaging story. I really liked it. And a lot of the things that I liked about it were actually true things that happened. So it was a really fun thing to learn about. The next book that I finished was Becoming Mrs. Lewis by Patti Callahan. This book was my book club pick for my library, and I actually got to choose it. I really enjoyed it. There were mixed feelings in the club because of some of the choices that Joy Lewis makes, but the author couldn't change those choices. So this is historical fiction based on the true story of Joy Davidson, who is the wife of C.S. Lewis. It was fascinating to read her story, and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Fowl Language by Brian Gordon. I've seen these comics on Instagram and Facebook, and I saw this comic book in Hoopla, and it was a free bonus pick. And I just picked it up kind of just to cleanse my palate, and it was just so funny, and I just want to talk about it. I mean, if you have a chance to read this book, I think you should because it's kind of funny. The next book I finished was Anybody Here Seen Frenchie? This is by Leslie Connor. She wrote one of my favorite books from 2021, and that was Truth is Told by Mason Buttle. I really, really liked this one. This story centers around Aurora, who gets in a lot of trouble because she talks too much, but her best friend is Frenchie. Frenchie is a young boy who is nonverbal, and he kind of latches on to Aurora before they start school, and she latches back onto him because he lets her talk as much as she wants, and it's just a really great situation for them. One day, as they are going into class, Frenchie doesn't show up to class, and Aurora deals with a lot of guilt because she thought Frenchie was right behind her and he wasn't. And she's dealing with guilt and worry and anxiety for her friend. And you're waiting to see if Frenchie's going to show up and what happened to him. It's really good. I really liked it. The next book that I finished was Lovely War by Julie Berry, and this book was lovely. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this one. My sister is the one that recommended it to me. But, you know, Greek gods messing with historical fiction, I just did not feel like that was something I was gonna like. But holy cow, it's so good. The events of the story are told during World War II by Aphrodite to her husband, and her husband Hephaestus, with a little help from some other Greek gods. And she's talking about World War I and how these two couples met and fell in love during World War I and the trials that they encountered. And it's heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. And I don't really know how to process that further than that. The next book that I finished was The Edge of In-Between by Lorelei Savaryn. And this is the book. Let me tell you, I was scared to read this book. Lorelei Savaryn's first book, The Circus of Stolen Dreams, was my very favorite book of 2021. I loved it so much. I loved the message in it. I loved the world that she created in it, and I just loved it. So when she was coming out with her second book, The Edge of In-Between, which will be published in April, I was so gung-ho that when she asked for a street team, I was like, yes, sign me up. And then I realized that I had to read the book and I needed to like it, or I couldn't stay on her street team. But guys, I loved it. I loved it. I loved it so, so much. Lorelei Savaryn in The Edge of In-Between creates this beautiful picture of this magical town. It is a retelling of The Secret Garden. with magical realism. The Dickon character is a ghost, and there isn't any racism or ableism in the book. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I'll probably be talking about it some more, but not right now. Moving on. The next book that I finished was Supernatural Society by Rex Ogle. Supernatural Society is middle grade. It is a fantasy thriller that I listened to, and I also had a NetGalley digital copy of it. It just published February 1st. It centers around Will, who moves from New York City to East Emerson. And when he arrives at East Emerson, he realizes that there's a lot of strange people roaming around the town, in that they're not actually wearing Halloween costumes. They are actually monsters, but only he can see them. He and Ivy, who is his neighbor. When Will's dog goes missing, he has a hunch that it has something to do with at least one of the monsters that are inhabiting the city. Most of the monsters are fine, but one is not. So Will and Ivy and Ivy's brother Linus work together to discover why all of the animals in East Emerson are going missing and what they can do to get them back. There are a ton of puzzles and word puzzles in the story, so it kind of is reminiscent of Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library, but it has that Scooby-Doo kind of twist to it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the audio. The narrator is really engaging and enigmatic, but you really do want to have a physical copy in front of you or a digital copy in front of you, because you want to be able to see those puzzles that are presented in the story. But I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it. The next book that I finished was Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This book is about Eliza, who writes anonymously a wildly popular webcomic called Monster C. And Wallace starts at her school, and he is one of Monster C's biggest fans. They become really close, and she needs to decide if she's going to reveal her identity to Wallace. This is a YA story. There's a lot of angst in it, but it is really beautiful. I listened to this story through Audible, and I really wish that I had also had a physical copy, because I heard that there's a lot of really great illustrations within the pages, and it would have been really cool to see those. But it was a really good story. I really liked it. Some of the angst got a little bit muffled for me, but I did enjoy it. There are some trigger warnings that you should be aware of, so definitely look into that if you might have any issues with that. The next book that I finished was The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. This book was a read aloud with my 7th and 8th graders. It takes place during World War II. Again, this is historical fiction based on a true person. For the third time in February, this book is historical fiction based on the life of a true person. And it is the story of Helmuth Hebner, who grew up in Nazi Germany, and originally at the start of the story was very, very patriotic and very much invested in the Third Reich. And as he learns more, he discovers that he doesn't necessarily want anything to do with that life. His goal is to spread awareness and truth, and that gets him arrested. So the story is told in a flashback from when he's in prison. So you know the whole time that eventually he's going to get arrested. And that was really intriguing, I think, for my 7th and 8th graders. They liked it. There were some things about it that were a little confusing and hard to follow, but it was really engaging, and it was very interesting, I think, for them to see that that point of view and that part of history in a way that they hadn't before. It paired really nicely with our unit on the Diary of Anne Frank, and it just gave them more perspectives to think about, and I really liked it, especially because of that. The next book that I read was Hooked on You by Catherine Fuller. It was a free borrow during the month of February on Hoopla, so I didn't have to use one of my 6 credits, and I was out of credits because I got the Encanto soundtrack probably twice. So anyway, I ran out of borrows in February. I was really thankful for the bonus borrows that they gave in the month of February. Hooked on You was one of them. It's a clean romance. Riley is the main character, and she left her hometown to move to New York City to become an artist. She's a very interesting character, but she's also very angsty. Like, there's a lot of YA left in her that seemed a little out of place. She was 28, and she hadn't been to her hometown since she left when she was 18. But her grandma is hurt and asked her to come back and help out at her yarn store. The fact that Riley hadn't been home since she left and always expected her grandma to come and visit her was really annoying to me, that she never bothered to come back home and visit her grandma. And the reason that she had for it didn't make sense to me at all. So it definitely wasn't my favorite book of the month, but it definitely isn't a book that I hated. I wouldn't not recommend it, but there are definitely some things about the character that really bugged me. And finally, I finished up February with the book Killer View by Catherine Bruns. This book is the 4th book in the Cindy York Cozy Mystery series. This is actually the first book that I read in the series, but I have loved Catherine Bruns's other Cozy Mystery series, and she contacted me and asked me if I wanted to read the ARC of Killer View that was coming out, and I said yes, absolutely, and I really liked it. Cindy York is a real estate agent, and there's always some crime happening around her, and she is just a woman that wants to have it all and does everything that she can to do that. I really liked Cindy York as a character. Her boss, Jacques, Jacques, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he's fabulous. I really like him. It's just it was really just an engaging, cute, intriguing mystery. So Cindy York is was a real estate agent. She's been out of the real estate game for about 5 years because she's been raising her daughter, who is now going into preschool. She also took her oldest kids to college, or her oldest daughter to college 2 years ago, and her middle children are in high school. She kind of just decided to stay home because she wanted to be there for her daughter, and various other things that were happening in her life made it just seem like that should be the right choice. I don't want to give anything away. It's kind of spoilery. So her former boss and best friend calls her back and calls her one day and says, look, one of your friends wants to hire the firm to sell her house, but she wants you to be the agent in charge. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that, that you didn't work here anymore. So would you come back? So she does. And there's a murder. And she's going to solve it because it's a cozy mystery. It was a lot of fun. I really liked it. I definitely recommend it. And I definitely think I'll be going back for the rest of the books in the series. I believe they're available on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know if they will be indefinitely, but I believe they are at this moment available on Kindle Unlimited. So definitely check out This in New York Mysteries by Catherine Bruns. So that's it. That's the 14 books that I read in the month of February. The Edge of In Between was definitely my favorite, but there were so many others that were in the running. The Boys on the Boat was so good. Lovely War, I just thought was amazing. Girl Waits with Gun, that one just had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. It was a good month. I am very excited to see what Middle Grade March holds. It is, well, what else Middle Grade March holds. It's a little late for this video to be coming out, but I wasn't sounding great. My nose has been a little stuffy. It still is a little bit, but it was a lot worse. I wasn't sounding great and I didn't feel like filming. So here we are, February 10th, or here we are, March 10th, and I am filming this video, and I've already read 7 books in March. So, you know, I think Middle Grade March is going to be a good one this year. I hope that in February you had a great reading month. What was your favorite book that you read in February? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, like this video if it feels right to you. And I hope you're finding wonderful things to read. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.